Hi scuba divers out there, welcome to Scuba Diving Magazine and welcome to Ask Mark, which is my scuba diving Q&A. I'm Mark, former dive instructor, and I'm just basically here to answer your scuba diving questions. So if you do have any questions about scuba diving, by all means pop them down in the comments below, and if you use the Ask Mark hashtag, then it will get featured in the next Q&A. This week I'm answering questions about cleaning your equipment, curved scuba diving masks, servicing costs, equipment recommendations, first stage differences, and regulator care. Let's dive straight in with the first question, which this week comes from Ivan Ibarra, who says, I have a white Xdeep Zen, looks nice but gets dirty. The white Cordura got a little bit dirty. Can I use a Shout detergent, spot cleaner, water and a brush? What do you recommend to use for the inside of the bladder to remove possible mold and growths? We can't get SeptiOne Material here in the USA. Any other fungicide mold killer you recommend? Yeah, so we used to use Chemgene. I think there's more than one. I want to say it had one of those like scientific HL4DL, something like that. But yeah, Chemgene is quite good. If it's just like recreational diving, then just some like household detergent. I've seen some people just use like vinegar, I want to say. But yeah, for cleaning the inside of your BCD, as long as you're not diving anywhere too nasty, yeah, just a household detergent or something usually does the job. Flush it on the inside, give it a good slosh around, and then clean it out. Chemgene is a bit better. It's a bit more like industrial. You use it at dive centers and whatnot to like on an industrial scale to clean equipment. For the outside, white gear. Oh, yeah, white gear sucks. Whenever anyone like asks the question, is like, oh, why are all like wetsuits black? It's like, well, it's Scuba Pro. I don't know if they still make it. They a couple years back, they made a white and I think it had pink details on it, a full white wetsuit. Looks stunning in the showroom, but depending on where you're diving, yeah, that's not going to stay white very long. So yeah, a lot of wetsuits are just black. It's not the only reason why, but yeah, it just makes a lot more sense. If you do have like white gear and it is getting grubby, I presume Shout is like a local spray detergent or something. We don't have that around here where I am. But yeah, I'd use some kind of fungicide and just make sure that it's good with nylon. Most BCDs are just made out of nylon Cordura, and yeah, just give it a good scrub. It is tough to keep white stuff white, especially while scuba diving. But the better preventative, it's better to be preventative. So post dive, give it a wash with fresh water, like dish soap or something, and then let it dry thoroughly, so that the algae doesn't get a chance to like get in and grow. You really want it to dry and be clean. But yeah, Chemgene, Chemgene, I think it was, and it was like it had a 4 in it. It had H's, L's, and D's. I want to say HLD4L. Something like that. If I can find it, I'll pop a link or whatever I can find about it. But yeah, Chemgene sticks in my mind as a like antibacterial thing that we used to use for scuba gear. Dave's Radio Repairs says, I'm still waiting for a mask with a wraparound mask to give a 150-degree view or better. I wonder why these mask companies are not putting research in a curved glass or plastic lens. I know exactly why, and they have actually, and some do. The first one, or the one at least that like sticks in my mind, is the AAK 180 mask, and that was like a ski goggle like mask. It had like the retro. Trying to find the best way. I'll bring a picture up on it so you can see it. But it was like the older oval shaped mask where you could still like pinch your nose, but the lens wrapped around and it gave you 180 degrees of vision. The downside to curved lenses is as soon as you, for skiing, snowboarding, all that kind of stuff, perfect. Wide field of view. As soon as you put water up against that curved lens, it becomes a magnifying glass. So it like distorts the whole like vision of what you're seeing, and it will just make your eyes go funny. It's like wearing someone else's prescription glasses. It bends the light in a certain way that it will give you a headache. One of my previous masks that I used to have was a Tusa Visio Tri-X mask, and that actually had like bubbled curved lenses on the sides. You tend to see this on a fair few masks nowadays. They're usually called like panorama or something, that do have side windows. They exist, they work perfectly fine. If they're flat, they're perfect. But whenever they're like rounded or bubbled, it does increase that field of view, but it distorts that picture. So whilst you can see out of the corner of your eye, you can see if your buddy's there or if something's like just here. You can see it, but if you look, it's all like warped and distorted. So it is quite tricky to actually have that, especially as a full lens. The funniest that I ever tried was I want to say like a Mares Super 8 or something mask. I'll see if I can find a picture of it. It's quite an old design. I'm pretty sure they don't make it anymore, and they haven't tried to recreate it. It was effectively I think it was a single lens, or I don't know. It was effectively a traditional mask, and it had those side windows that you get on a lot of panorama masks nowadays. It also had some like windows that were downwards so that you could read your gauges a little bit easier, and it might have had some up at the top, so you could like look up. And on paper, these all make just genius sense. It's like, oh, of course, why wouldn't you? It would just have like all this sort of extra space. But when you're actually in the water, it's, you know, in like movies and cartoons and stuff, when they have like a spider's eye view and it has like 8 different panels all moving like almost independently, that's how you feel. I tried it and I lasted about 10 minutes before I just had to take it off, because everything's moving at a slightly different angle and your brain just can't compute it all. It's so different to what you're used to seeing, and it just gave me a headache. And yeah, you just move around, and it was like you were looking at 6 different panes, and my brain couldn't figure it out. But yeah, we don't really see too many curved lenses, just because it distorts and it creates that like magnifying effect, and it really just hurts your head. Alexander Sass says, "Hi Mark, my local dive centre, which usually always has the best prices, says that you have to pay for a regulator revision 140 euros per second stage. So 280 euros only for the second stages. Is this price normal? With that money, I could almost buy new regulators. How much should I pay for a revision when visiting a certified retailer?" Now, by revision, I presume you mean like a service. 140 euros per second stage is expensive. It is just extortionate. They might as well be gold plating it for you whilst they're at it. The only like causes of it, in my mind, for being that expensive are, one, you have some obscure regulator, and it's really hard or really limited edition to get hold of any servicing kits. So trying to get hold of those servicing kits are tough. The service center might be just literally in the middle of nowhere, so they have a bit of monopoly, so they're just charging whatever they want because there's no competition. Could be that. I mean, there are some brands that are a bit more expensive, like Atomic service kits tend to be a bit more expensive than some other brands, but not that much more expensive. To put it into like context, around here, you're talking about £100 to service your entire regulator, but barring like if you need a replacement front cover or something. If it's just like the service kits, the traditional service kits and the labour for a complete set of regulators, that's going to set you back about £100. So yeah, 140 euros per second stage, and then the first stage as well. Yeah, that's getting bonkers expensive. Yeah, I'd be like looking around. There are some here. I don't know if they do it sort of where you're from, but like trying to think of the best way to put it, almost like mail order, where you buy the service online through them. They either collect your regulator, or they or you ship it to them. They service it, reassemble it, and then ship it back to you. The only downside is that sometimes they bed in after the first few uses, so they need a little bit of a tweak. But if you can do that yourself, yeah, you're onto a winner. But yeah, it's normally around £100. You can find cheaper ones. Depends on the servicing kits, because some, yeah, like atomic ones tend to be a bit more expensive. You can get some cheaper brands that are a bit cheaper, obviously. But yeah, normally around £100 for an entire set of regulators at your dive centre, unless there's something like really obscure and you have a pretty premium set of regulators. Yeah, no, that seems really expensive. Tonka45 says, this is my list for beginner diver as I am learning or thinking about. Plus, if I want to advance, I would hope this list will keep me up to date. Please advise. Saving money and not want to make a costly mistake. So you're buying your first equipment, and yeah, you want to make sure that it's decent stuff. So we're looking at the Cressi Calibro mask, the Apex RK3 fins in yellow, Scuba Pro Sport Steamer wetsuit in 5mm, and a Scuba Pro Go BCD with an Air 2 5th Gen inflator. So the Calibro mask, yeah, very nice mask. It's more aimed at like apnea free diving, so you might find it has a slightly smaller field of view. It's not like binocular vision or anything, but if you compare it to a more traditional scuba mask, then you might find it does limit you a bit. If the selling point of the Calibro is that like that internal seal, and that's what's selling you on the mask, then look at the Cressi Zeus and the Quantum. They both have that like fog stop seal on the inside, but with larger scuba style lenses. So that might be worth like considering. Calibro's great, but it's more aimed at free diving. It's a bit lower volume. Apex RK3 fins, yeah, can't fault them. I have myself a pair in black, just because that was the only colour they had when they first brought them out. Yellow, perfectly fine. Yellow doesn't discolor quite as fast as their white ones, and it's still a nice bright color to be seen. Scuba Pro Sport 5mm wetsuit, yeah, Scuba Pro makes lovely neoprene. The Sport is like the one down from the Everflex, and yeah, 5mm is a good all-rounder, so yeah, it's a nice wetsuit. That Scuba Pro Go BCD. Go BCD is a travel jacket style BCD, so it's a bit stripped down. I used to teach with something quite similar to it, and Scuba Pro do make good tough BCDs that do last a long time. Would you outgrow a jacket style BCD? Maybe eventually. It's one of those things of some divers love them and just dive jacket style BCDs. Others progress onto wing style BCDs relatively quickly, but yeah, it's fine. It's good as long as you want a travel jacket style BCD. Yeah, Scuba Pro Go is good, good quality. And the Air 2 5th Gen inflator, instead of a traditional inflator, you actually have a second stage built into it. It's basically R095, I think. That's like blended into your inflator. Now, this has a few caveats. The first one is that if you're renting regulators, you might find it tricky to find a hose that actually connects to it, because it has a specific connector. Because it's a second stage, it's effectively your alternate. You have to have a higher airflow valve on the end. Comes with it, but it means that if you're renting regulators, they're going to have to take the BCD hose off of their regulators, fit your hose onto it, and then you can go diving. And then at the end of it, you're going to have to take that hose back. So it can be done, just makes it a bit fiddly. Otherwise, it does make for a pretty lightweight set of regulators because you can just get away with a primary, the inflator hose, and then your gauges, and that's it. You don't have that octo hose. Another consideration is you're now moving into primary donate territory. The primary hose on most regulators is relatively short. It's like 60, 75 centimeters. So you do have to get quite cozy with whoever you're donating gas to get out. It can be done, but if I was going for that setup, I'd probably have a long hose primary setup and then use that octo as an alternate. But all good brands, all top brands. They've been in the industry a long time. They're all very trusted. So yeah, it's all good gear. The only things that I would like pick out is, yeah, that Calibro mask. Just make sure that like a Zeus or a Quantum aren't more suitable for scuba diving, and the Scuba Pro Go BCD. Just make sure that jacket style BCD is what you're going to be into, and of course that Air 2, yeah, they do work really well. I do know lots of divers that dive with them or something very similar, but yeah, if you're renting regulators, it can be a little bit fiddly because you might not have that that fitting on their regulators. Ale Korea says, what are the practical differences between a Mark 25 and other Scuba Pro diaphragm regulators like the Mark 17 or the 19, and the maintenance cost of piston versus diaphragm? Thanks. So starting off with servicing costs, I think piston regulators tend to be a touch cheaper, just because piston regulators have fewer moving parts on the inside compared to a diaphragm. So actual replacement parts, there's fewer of them. So the servicing kits tend to be a little bit cheaper, and I do mean a little bit cheaper. I think Scuba Pro still does an individual service kit per design, because some manufacturers have gone down the route of, instead of producing like 5 or 6 different service kits, each for individual like first stages, they just create a first stage service kit that services all of them. Makes it a lot easier, or at least a lot neater. However, it does mean there's a bit of waste, because you do have those extra O-rings that don't fit that particular first stage, so they just end up either in a spares or in the bin. As far as costs go, yeah, fewer O-rings just means it's a little bit cheaper. As far as like performance goes, you're not going to notice so much anymore. It used to be that piston regulators were like high performance, and diaphragm regulators were just, they were tough, and you could like almost service them in the field. But nowadays, diaphragm technology has just improved so much that, yeah, it'll be hard for an average like recreational scuba diver to even tell the difference between which first stage they're breathing from. As far as the Scuba Pro ones go, I don't think they make the Mark 17 anymore. I don't think it was in their 2022 lineup. I almost think the Mark 19 has replaced it, just because it's got that 5-port swivel turret. It's effectively a diaphragm version of the Mark 25, and I don't think I saw it in their 22 catalogue, so I think they might have discontinued the 17. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. As far as like practicality, between the Mark 17 and the Mark 25, no, correction, the Mark 19 and the Mark 25, yeah, they're both 5-port swivel turrets. The only consideration would be is that the Mark 25, you'd have to clean it a little bit more thoroughly between dives if you're diving somewhere particularly nasty, just because the water can get inside of the first stage and like mill around some of the moving parts. So I'd want to like really flush that out, keep that nice and clean. It's got the Xtis like coating on each of the parts so that ice doesn't form on it, but I'd still want to wash it a bit more thoroughly compared to an environmentally sealed first stage, which I know the Mark 17 was. I think the Mark 19 is environmentally sealed. I'll put if I'm wrong or right down here somewhere. But yeah, as far as like maintenance cost, you'll save a few pounds or a few dollars or euros, wherever you are. You'll save a few dollars a year in servicing costs, but that's about it. Otherwise, you probably won't notice a huge difference. Adam Collins says, on a 4-day liverboard, is it necessary to rinse regulators off at the end of each day or the end of the trip? I mean, I try and wash your regulators as often or as frequently as you can. Normally at the end of a dive on a liverboard, there's usually like a freshwater hose on the dive deck, just a little one. And at the end of the dive, as soon as I get out, still wearing the gear, it's still connected and pressurized and everything, I usually flush my my second stages and my dive computer and any like technical stuff like torches and things. I usually flush them out and then go and take my gear off, just so that it helps to remove as much of the salt in the salt water as possible. But after that, I wouldn't disconnect my regulators and like put them in a full-on dunk tank and soak them and then get them out and drip dry them. I wouldn't go that crazy, just because you're going to do it like 4 times a day depending on the dive schedule. So do it as frequently as you can. If you miss one, it's not the end of the world. And I wouldn't worry like at the end of the day, give it a thorough one. That's probably a bit too much. As long as you're washing it or giving it a quick rinse between dives, you should be okay. And then it's normally at the end of the trip, everyone washes all their kit down and drains it all, because you don't want to be carrying any water trapped inside of your BCD back home. That's a really expensive way of traveling. Let that dry, and then normally when I get home, I give it a proper clean with a proper detergent and then dry it out before storing it away. But try and do it as frequently as you can, but don't worry about doing it really thoroughly after every single dive. And that's it for this week. Yeah, interesting questions, good questions. Yeah, it is definitely worth washing your regulators. And if you do have like white scuba gear, yeah, try and clean it as soon after you get out of the water, so that nasties can't grow in the material. White is just really tough. Any like bright colors, they're really tough to keep clean, especially if you're like freshwater scuba diving. But yeah, if you have any recommendations, I mean, I don't know if you can get Chemgene over there in the States. If there are any other like local detergents or something that you guys and girls can help them out with, by all means pop them down in the comments below. And whatever you use, whatever helps, put it down in there with any like explanation, just to help them out. But if you do have any questions, by all means pop them down in the comments as well. But if you use the hashtag, the Ask Mark hashtag, it just means that you're going to get featured in the next show. That's it for this week. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.